people, and it's gone on far too long, and we... This issue, folks, is the type of issue the Poor People's Campaign has been working on for quite some time. In fact, Reverend William Barber and others have actually been there to Louisiana's Cancer Alley dealing with this issue. On June 18th, the Poor People's Campaign and low-wage workers are going to actually be in D.C. for their Memorial March, addressing this issue and so many others. Joining us now is a member of the Apache Stronghold community fighting to protect their holy land. And also joining us is Reverend Liz Theoharis, co-convener of the Poor People's Campaign. So I want to thank both of you here. Is Vanessa Noise? Vanessa Noise, glad to have you here, Vanessa. Yes. And Reverend Liz Theoharis, glad to have you as well. Vanessa, what you just heard there is similar to the battle that y'all are engaged in and others, that like here you are fighting and battling, and you're not getting lots of media attention. You're not getting lots of broad coverage, but these things still matter to affected people.
Yes, definitely. You know, the indigenous people here being the first people of this nation, and yet have been disregarded on their spirituality, and also being at the forefront fighting for the environmental injustice that is going to affect everyone as a whole, no matter what race you are or what religion you believe in.
And Liz, again, when we talk about what's happening there in Louisiana's Cancer Alley, what's happening on these various reservations, here are people, you know, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, you know, these networks, they're not there. They're not actually covering these stories on a daily basis, so it's hard to gain traction. And so you need to have mobilized and organized forces like the Poor People's Campaign to be able to raise these issues to the national consciousness.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, and you have powerful heroes and heroines, you know, fighting these battles, whether it's in Oak Flat with the Apache Stronghold, or whether it's Rise Up St. James in Cancer Alley, and these amazing, you know, grassroots efforts of people impacted who, you know, are declaring that victory is going to be mine, and keeping on organizing, keeping on coming back, and you know, these especially powerful women leaders, but poor and impacted folk, making sure that the nation and the world pays attention to the pain, but also the power coming out of these communities.
Indeed. And Vanessa, when you talk about this battle that y'all are in, how long have you been waging this battle?
Well, for me, as an indigenous person, you know, I was raised that we've been fighting this from the first breath we take. We are people that weren't supposed to survive. We're supposed to be extinct. And so our battle has continued from the day that we've been born. And with the Resolution Copper and the Oak Flat issue, we've been fighting that for over 20 years. And it's been, you know, at the very beginning, yes, it was a religious fight for the Apache people to protect a holy site, but it became a state of Arizona fight. Then it became a United States fight. Now it's international, because if my religion is at stake, and that means everyone's religion is at stake. And if they continue to destroy our natural resources, we won't have a world to live in. And we as indigenous people think 7 generations ahead. And what kind of world are we going to leave our future generations? My great-grandchildren's, yours, this whole world. Nothing's going to be left to survive on if these corporations and the United States government continue to have the mindset of profit and not the well-being of our people.
And Liz, the copper mine that she's speaking of, again, that was impacted by policymakers, elected officials. I'm always trying to connect the dots for our audience to understand that not voting then empowers somebody who does vote. And what they did in this case could happen again if you got the wrong person who's in office.
That's exactly right. I mean, John McCain, you know, puts in this you know, sneaks it into policy, but it also has the potential and possibility of being undone, right? I mean, they can immediately, Congress has the power right now to save Oak Flat. And so it is that our votes matter. It is that our organizing matters. and our voices matter. And so, that's why we in the Poor People's Campaign are continuing to enliven and enlarge this electorate of poor and low income people, calling out to candidates and to elected officials that, 1/3 of this electorate in these United States, are poor and low income people. And we need to hear about the issues and demands and priorities of people in the elections. And then we need to see people who are willing to actually pass the kinds of policies that people need and are demanding, like saving Oak Flat, like regulating Cancer Alley, like passing a child tax credit, and lifting up families in West Virginia and Alabama and Pennsylvania and all across the country.
Questions from our panel? Monique, you're first.
No, I don't have one. I'm just wondering what we can do to support.
Liz?
Great. So the Poor People's Campaign is organized in more than 40 states across the country. We would love people to get involved in our coordinating committees, and you can reach out to whatever state you live in. If it's Arizona at poorpeoplescampaign.org. You can go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org, and we are mobilizing for the largest gathering of poor and low-income people in this country's history on June 18th. And so we need everybody to come out to Washington, D.C. for a mass Poor People and Low-Wage Workers Assembly, a moral march on Washington and to the polls. And that's going to be, gathering in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania Avenue at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and the event will start at 10 a.m. and it's going to be powerful, and we need to hear and see people with us there.
Scott?
Yeah, good evening. Marches are super important. They're game changers in the social, political, and economic movement. But I've always believed that the showing of a strong march and a strong presence should lead to the follow-up and the real hard work that comes after that. Once you do this march, let's say you have 1 million people show up at the march, powerful speeches, the political arena, Republican and Democrats, not only see and hear you, but what happens next? What is the work that needs to be done post-march to really make this not only effective, but deliver the results that America needs to service or serve those 140 million people who are either low income or have low wages?
Vanessa first, then Liz. Vanessa?
Well, one, it's, to talk about for Indigenous people, and I think it's a part of healing for all people, is to talk about the deceit on how America was founded. And to know that what they did to the Indigenous people and relocating us and taking us from our homelands and putting us on these trusted lands by the government called reservation is it didn't reinvent the wheel when it came to everybody else. They put you guys as the same as us as Indigenous people. For those that are low wage, that are suffering all these injustice, they're doing the same thing to you guys that they did to the Indigenous people so many years ago, centuries ago. So it starts now. It starts gathering. It starts coming together and taking those stands and not be a bystander, and reaching out to those politicians that have the power to make change and remind them that they're in there because of us, and knowing that we all need to come together and unify and stand one next to the other, one in prayer, and two in making these changes, and those that are held responsible to their word and to actually do what's best for the people.
Liz?
And why we're calling it a mass moral march on Washington and to the polls is about, us going back into our states, into our communities, and keeping on organizing and building up that power. Right now, the Poor People's Campaign is organized in almost every state of the country. And that's, trying to be permanently organized communities, folks that both can respond and react to the policies that get passed that take away our rights, that deny our dignity, that try to take away our health care or wages, but also so that we can be organized and unified and coming together across all the lines that divide us, to be able to demand, all of the priorities of people, that 140 million and all the different groupings that make up that group. And so that the whole idea of a moral march on Washington is then to go back. And if we listen to, the words of Dr. King, from the March on Washington in 1963. We often, just pay attention to the stage and even to the crowd, but the message there was go back, go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to Arizona, and that's exactly what's happening. We're going to be nationalizing these state-based movements and keeping on pushing from the ground up.
Robert.
Thank you.
I would love to connect with you guys after this and see what we can do together to coordinate on these issues. I'm from Columbus, Georgia. The reason I mention that is Columbus is located in Muskogee County. Our high school mascot was the Kendrick Cherokees. Our baseball team was the Columbus Red Sticks. Anyone who knows American history knows that it's ground zero for the Trail of Tears. America has a long and sordid history of the destruction of the indigenous people of this country, which continues until this day. Having Democrats in power in the House, the Senate, the White House, who are the federal officials who have been the most supportive, and who do we need to be reaching out to pressure while Democrats still have a majority in the House and the Senate to work on these issues and actually make some progress? It's one thing to have marches. It's another thing to have people who are willing to sponsor legislation in the House and the Senate, people who are willing to put appropriations into bills, people who are willing to really go to the mat to fight for the community.
Vanessa, you want to go first?
Yeah, Congressman Raul Grijalva has put in the Sable Flat bill in the House, and then we have Senator Bernie Sanders, who also has one in the Senate. So they have been our biggest, I guess, on the political level, pushing to return what Congress did to us back in 2014. And so we're continuing to ask everyone, no matter where you're at, is to reach out to your congresspeople, to reach out to your senators, because it does need congressional decision made to overturn them from destroying our holy land, Oak Flat. So we have the two both in the House. There is a bill in them. Now we just need them to push it. Now we need them to vote on it. Now we need them to actually make that change and acknowledge the indigenous people. Oak Flat set such a precedent, not just on a religious genocide, but also on environmental injustice. And so many people and so many towns and cities are going to be heavily impacted with such an environmental destruction. But also, if Arizona goes through with this, that sets the precedents for the whole United States. So please, that's where we're at, along with the Poor People Campaign being such a big support on getting those politicians to recognize us and asking them to support the Sable Flat Act.
And what as a whole across the states the Poor People's Campaign has done is indeed worked with different Congress people to introduce a resolution. We have a third Reconstruction resolution fully addressing poverty and low wages from the bottom up. That was introduced in this congressional session, and it's about trying to win more and more of our Congress people around the needs and priorities of the 140 million. We have demands around Oak Flat in there, but around voting rights, around many of the policies and legislative suggestions that could really address things. I mean, we have been trying to push everyone in the House, in the Senate, in the White House, but especially focusing on Congress, to protect and expand voting rights, to pass and extend a child tax credit and invest economically in our children and our elders, in healthcare, to have climate resilient jobs. And we've seen Manchin and Sinema and a whole bunch of Republicans blocking all of the things that actually the vast majority of Americans are wanting. And so we've been trying to keep up that pressure. And now we will keep on, in these midterms, making sure that candidates know how important it is to actually pass policies that lift from the bottom so everybody can rise. So we've been able to work with the Progressive Caucus and the Black Caucus and many of different gatherings and groupings of politicians. But our movement is a movement of the people. We never actually endorse candidates. We're not partisan. We're deeply political, and we make sure that those demands, those solutions that are out there, that are at hand, are out in the public square, and pushing our politicians to actually pass them and protect the rights of the people.
Then, Vanessa, Reverend Liz Theoharis, we certainly appreciate both of you coming on, and we'll all be getting ready for June 18th.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roland.
All right. Thanks a bunch. All right, folks, got to go to the break. We come back. We're going to talk SWAC, television deals. Out. What's going on with what many call the premier conference for HBCUs? We'll discuss that next on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
We welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022.
We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful. A new, unsettling force, and we are here.
We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, poor and low-income people, have to reconstruct society from the bottom up.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
Because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right.
Hold on, just a little while longer.
We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rent.
People with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group.
It's crazy to me that in 2021, it's still legal for workplaces to pay a sub-minimum wage to people with disabilities.
There are still so much trial and tribulations that we go through as Indigenous people. We can't get a decent wage to sustain ourselves, nor can we get adequate housing.
Veterans across this nation say enough is enough. We can't pat essential workers on the back on one day and then cut their health care the next day.
Health is a political choice.
What more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's?
There are still forces in denial that would try to slow walk our transition to a clean economy and a just future for us all.
We have an immoral system run by immoral people.
But together we walk, and we walk and we fight.
It's time for a change. Reconstruyamos esta gran nación.
See, we are people of resilience. As we fight these interlocking injustices together,
when we work together, mobilize together, and rise together, we become a voice for the voiceless, and we become an agent of change in a time where great change is needed.
We need the third reconstruction to ensure that deaf people, people with disabilities, and all people can have the right to live and to thrive.
We know what they are doing, but the question is, what are we going to do? Reconstruction begins when we change our mentality and say it's time for you to get your foot off of my neck.
Justice is coming soon.
Hey, do you believe that of today?
Oh, somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore.